TalkArt. I'm Sally Rain, and I will be your host as we delve into the world of the artist and the art that's all around us. TalkArt is sponsored by the Silicon Valley Open Studios. During the first 3 weekends in May, hundreds of local artists open their studios to the public. For more information, go to the website svos.org. Our guest, Martha Castillo, is a Palo Alto printmaker, and she creates abstract monotypes using an unusual new technique called Clayprinting. And she's here to demonstrate her techniques for us. So welcome, Martha.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your background and education in art.
Well, I've been involved in the arts all of my life, starting out with ballet and studied that seriously for 13 years and moving on to theater and then into the visual arts. And I've tried just about every technique there is, experimented here and there. But when I came across clay printing, I was like, that's it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
So tell me a little bit about what clay printing is.
Okay.
What does it mean?
It's a printmaking technique, and it's monotypes, creates monotypes, so every print is different.
Right.
But if you're familiar with typical, traditional printmaking, you have ink and paper and a press. In clay printing, you don't have any of those things. You have a slab of leather-hard stoneware clay.
Okay.
And this is leather-hard stoneware clay that's underneath here. And you have slip, which is liquid clay made from a really white fine powdered clay, and then you make it into a liquid. And you add pure pigments to that, and I mix all my own colors.
Wow.
And then I start painting on the slab and building up layers.
Paint with clay.
I paint with clay.
And the clay is what goes onto the print itself.
That's right.
Oh, so you brought an example of a completed one.
Yes.
That's here.
That's right.
So let's take a look at this compared to the plate that you have there.
The first thing that might be confusing is that these two images, this is a mirror image of this.
Right.
In printmaking, you always get the mirror image. But I did this print earlier today, and then I worked back onto the plate to create a variation on this. You can see, here's the letter D backwards, and there's the letter D there, so you can see that there are those different elements. But then I peeled off that clay onto that print, I painted some more onto this print, and I will pull a print so you can see how that process works. And then after that, I'll show you how I apply color in different ways to the plate.
Excellent. So this is still damp. It's not dry.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's what we call leather hard, and as you can see, as I showed you, this is, it's clay. It's never going to be fired. It's not mushy, but it has some body to it. But if I touch it, the color does not, well, my hands are already dirty, but the color does not transfer off onto my hands now because it's not really wet.
Okay, great. Well, let's take a look at pulling a print off of that.
Okay, first I need my trusty spritz bottle. The first thing I want to do is give us clean edges on the print. Oh, there we go. So I'm masking off the edges with Builder's drywall tape. A lot of the materials and tools I use in this process are really kitchen tools, things from the hardware store. Kind of fun. I love going into hardware stores. I bet. It's always good stuff there. So I'm just adding this to the slab to mask it off, so I'll have nice clean edges on the print. Now I'm going to print on this fabric. It's a spun polyester, so it's not woven, but it is a fabric, and I need that.
Okay.
This is one of my main tools. I'm going to dampen that surface a little bit, and I'm going to make sure this surface stays damp. And I am gradually going to coax that top layer of clay off of the slab and transfer it onto the fabric. And unlike traditional printmaking, it takes a little bit. It's not just a one-time and it's printed. So I do a little bit of spritzing and rolling. You can see some of the color is starting to move, and it's a back and forth process.
It's not just the pigment that's coming up, it's actually a layer of clay.
Well, I went to Philadelphia to meet my first granddaughter, whose name is Sally.
Oh, very nice.
I spent 3 weeks staying there, and a friend of mine who's an artist put me in touch with an art center. And I was perusing their site looking for a workshop while I was there, and I came across the name Mitch Lyons and the thing called Clayprinting.
So, it looks like you're done.
Just about. I make sure the whole thing is flat. Oh, squeaky. And then I use a spoon to burnish the edges to make sure I get a nice, clean, crisp edge. And then, whoops, that's coming off anyway. Voila.
And there's the print.
And there's the finished print. And again, there's that D, which, you know, we've
there we go.
Oh.
So it is the mirror image.
We have the mirror image, right. And then I'll remove these to start the next print.
Excellent. So now you're ready to start a new one. But let's take a look at some of the images that you brought of other completed projects, prints that you have.
All right.
So you brought some images.
I did. Yes, I did. This piece, called Rittenhouse #1, is the very first piece I ever made in that intro workshop with Mitch Lyons in Philadelphia. And it was at an art center named Rittenhouse, hence the title. And the second slide is the second print. And there it is. I clearly did some more work back into the slab. You can see the red circles added and kind of a yellowy star shape. But the basic underneath, you can just about make out the letters on that right-hand side that are left from the first print.
And the colors you use are beautiful.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, as I say, I mix my own colors. Every color is a separate layer on the slab. And I really like vibrant, bright, intense colors, and I like the contrast of light and dark, and the textures, the way they play together.
And you use colors that you used on previous prints that show through still.
That's right. I never clean the plate off. I use it over and over again. Sometimes I paint over quite a big piece of it, but all those layers that are underneath are left behind for the next print, or the 10 prints down. In this piece, I did paint the whole slab over with white, and then added back the colors. Actually, the middle of it, the orangey part, was left from what was on the slab before, but a lot of the white and the blue was added on top to cover up what was there.
That's a really interesting technique. You can see the many layers of color and how that works. Very interesting.
And the title Lace Iris is because some of the mark making was made using an old piece of lace as a stencil.
Ah.
And this one's sort of self-explanatory. I have a little series of weather pictures. I'm a member of Gallery House in Palo Alto, and their logo is sort of reminiscent of this shape, and that's where the house came from.
And the straight lines, is that something that you paint on there?
That's done with a technique I didn't bring with me today, but using an ear syringe to basically squirt out, fill it with liquid clay, and then squirt it out to draw with it. Makes the lines.
Wow.
And rain, again, you can see the same house, but I've taken away and added back quite a bit of new material. Motet #1 is from a series I did. I had a show at Gallery House that had a musical theme. So all of the pieces from that show are titled like pieces of music, a motet being a short piece of classical music, like a sonata or concert. Yeah, one of those.
And so it looks to me that it started out sort of with pink and orange, and then you built up on top of that, and you can kind of, do you scrape some off?
I do. You can see the
Yeah.
vertical lines. They're a little subtle, but you can see those vertical lines are scratching back through the surface to expose layers that are underneath.
Oh, they're beautiful. Very nice paintings.
And I did Chinese box after a art trip to China, and was inspired by the Asian shapes and colors and textures.
So how did you get that sort of dashed, spotted texture?
Well, that's using a transfer technique and a pasta cutter, and I'm hoping to have a moment to show you that a little bit later on.
A pasta cutter. So you use pizza roller and pasta cutters.
That's right.
Beautiful. Well, very nice work. I really like the way that the layers show through and how you've developed them.
Thank you.
Very nice.
They're really fun to do.
So what did you have to show us next?
Okay, well, I'm going to show you how I made that little grid stuff
Okay,
that
excellent.
you were just talking about. And I think I'll use green. This is that liquid, the slip, that I have put onto newsprint, on a stack of newsprint.
So this is actually clay slip.
That is
that
clay
you've
slip.
mixed water and the pigment in that
Right.
you've chosen.
That's right. And I did it on paper because before I can put a second layer on, everything has to be leather hard. If they're liquid, they'll run together and I won't get what I'm looking for. So I make them on paper. They dry much quicker, and then I can apply that a little bit more specifically. I can shape it in different ways. I can draw through it. But what I want to show you is making those little lines. And this is my pasta cutter, and it's got little wheels, and it's got cutouts in them, so they're not solid wheels.
So you sort of...
So yeah, I just rolled that in, and some of the, sometimes it comes off very solid, as this. Sometimes it's more open work like that. It's one of the things I really like about this process is you never really know what's going to happen next.
Right,
I love
it's
that
unpredictable.
sort of serendipity. And I hate to waste anything, and there's all this beautiful clay left behind, so I think I will put that back on here. And I can just put part of it. I don't have to use all of it. And then the next step will be to flatten everything, make sure it's all adhered and that all of the clay is one level.
So these are sheets of newsprint that you use.
That's right. And one of the beauties of this process is that virtually everything I use is recyclable. So I do go through quite a bit of newsprint. Sometimes I use regular newspapers, but then it all goes into the recycle bin. Okay, let's try one other.
Green pigment. What type of pigments do you use? Are they dry as well? Or?
Most of the pigments I use come in liquid form. They're pure pigment. They don't have any binders or drying agents or thickeners in them. This is the kind I use most often. It's made by a company that is interested in non-toxic water-based printmaking using traditional techniques, but we found that it works for this non-traditional technique. And so I, let's see, I was going to make an orange. So I need to shake it up, make sure that it's clay particles floating in water. That's basically all that's in here. And this is the white slip that I showed you before.
So it's kind of pancake batter-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good description. Much more interesting than heavy cream. That's what everybody says. And I'm going to put some pigment.
So do you measure, or do you have...
I don't measure.
You don't measure?
I hardly measure anything. Just the way I do my work. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen next. So I just eyeball it. Put some in. If I don't like the color, I add more, or I mix it with a different color.
So, and the beauty of this is that you can just keep going. Is there a point where you need to stop and let it dry before you can add more on?
Well, every layer needs to be leather hard. And this is quite thin right now, so rather than applying this to the slab, I'll just make another. We'll let that dry, and if it dries enough, I might be able to use it in a little bit. But that's how I do that. And if we could move that to the back table,
Sure.
just leave a couple of sheets on there, okay? And I love using grids, and circles and squares are really show up in my work a lot. But I've also found that there's these stencils, as you had the alphabet there before, and for some reason this particular number stencil really catches my eye. And one of the things I like is that 1 through 6 are all in a line, and 7, 8, 9, 0 go the other way. And somehow I just find that really fun. So I need to put it reverse unless I want the letters reversed on the print. Oops, got 2 pieces of paper here. I'm going to make this stick down. And then ordinarily I would then paint the liquid slip right on there right now, but because then I have to wait for a while for it to dry, I'm going to use this transfer that will make it go much more quickly. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this on here so it will go through the openings on the stencil and give us those nice shapes. Right now, it's, again, a lot of it's going down, but the stencil is blocking, so when I lift the stencil up, we'll see the numbers.
This is fascinating, and it's all layers of clay.
That's right.
Do you have to be careful to make sure that your plate itself doesn't ever dry?
Pretty much. I keep it wrapped in a damp towel most of the time. If I'm going to be away for a long time, I know I'm not going to be working, I can let it dry out completely because it's potter's clay, it's clay of the earth, and as long as I don't fire it, I can just get it wet again and it comes back.
Very nice.
But mostly I keep it wrapped with an old towel, damp towel, and then wrapped in plastic. And let's see where that...
Look at that.
So there are the numbers. And again, I want to make sure that everything stays damp, so I spritz it quite often. I roll it again. And then if I liked the way it looked, I could say, okay, let's make another print. Or keep working.
Well, why don't you put a little bit more on, and then we'll take another look at some other images that you did. So let's put some more of the slip on, maybe, if you have some prepared.
I do have some other ones, other ways of doing it. This is actually not using slip directly. Think here for a minute. I never know what I'm going to do next. So, but again, I said I liked circles. Actually, I think I'm going to do a little bit. This one's thicker, so it should dry a little more quickly. And I'm going to help it along. I'm going to put this is from one of those plastic crates that you get for storing whatever.
So you're always looking for some stencil-like material.
Yeah, grids and all kinds of things. And then this is chalk, which is basically clay and pigment. And I'm going to grate that on here.
With a sieve.
With a sieve.
That's great.
I always have a nutmeg grater around here somewhere. There it is. Another way to grate that on. Gets a slightly different. And just for fun, let's put another
color. So you're working with blues and
right now
greens.
that's all
Look
blues.
at that. Very nice. So that's a sort of a turquoisey blue, and you've got several layers, and now you spritz it again.
So that dry chalk on top of the really wet stuff is going to help it dry. The wet that's under that plastic is probably going to mush a little bit. but we're doing this so that you see the technique. So we'll pretend that if it does mush, that was exactly what we wanted.
That's what abstract art is, right?
Yes, great.
Wow, look
Not
at that.
bad, not bad.
Beautiful.
And another thing I really like to use for masking is just torn newsprint. It makes a really good masking material.
So you're creating a line that you're going to paint the slip into?
That's right.
Oh, very nice.
And I think I'll put just the plain white. Try to get that dried a little bit too while I'm at it. So I'm making sure that the paper is adhered so that when I add the slip it doesn't scooch under and ruin the line that I'm looking for. And we need a different color than that. How about this dark green?
So you've decided to cover over some of the numbers.
Right, making a line through them.
Beautiful green. Let me guess, you're going to roll it next.
Very good.
I'm getting this.
Did you take my class?
You teach as well?
I do. I teach workshops in my studio, and I've taught some around California as well.
Very nice.
Okay, now I'm going to try to get this to dry. I'm going to try to get this to dry and adhere. Now if it mushes, it's not so bad because the excess is going to go onto that paper.
Wow.
Oh, it did. Look, it
Beautiful.
slipped right under there. And now we're going to flatten it again. I want to make sure that this part of the slab doesn't get dry, so I'm going to spritz it.
Great. So one more roll. And so while this is drying, why don't we take a look at some of the other images that you brought, and you can tell us a little bit. These are a different size, you said.
Yeah, these are the larger ones.
Large ones. Okay, well, let's take
great.
a look at those.
Okay, so this is from that musical series that I did, and this piece is as large as some of these behind me. It has the stencils there with all the circles were done by tearing newspaper to make the shapes. This is one from a different series. And it's also very large, like it's 40 inches by 56, I think.
Wow. And so did you paint the white last?
I painted the white,
first?
That's a very good question. No, no, yes. Those card-like shapes up at the top, on the top half, are lots of layers from previous prints.
That's what it looks like.
And I masked those off with sheets of Mylar that I happened to have, that somebody gave me that were that shape. And then I did paint a lot of white around it, and it actually has a slightly blue tinge. I don't know if it shows too well on the screen, but and then added back on those little flecks are what I call confetti, little pieces of already dried clay off of those papers that I do the transfer, the leftovers.
Oh.
And then I can kind of sprinkle it around like confetti to make that shape. This one not quite as large, and just
Lots of layers on that one.
lots of
That's
layers
beautiful.
and really playing around with the grids. And this one again, back to the, this one's not quite as, it's about 34 by 45. And lots and lots of layers and colors, a lot of that drawing with the liquid clay.
Very nice. They're beautiful work.
Thank you.
I love your choices of color.
Oh, thank you.
So let's go back and you finish this. We have a couple more minutes that you can
Okay.
show us some more techniques.
Okay. I like grids. This is another builder's supplies thing. I think it's also kind of like the drywall tape for, I don't want it there, for masking off, putting the seam on drywall. So
Oh, yeah.
glue this on there somehow, and then fill it with putty or something. So I roll that so it's embedded.
So this will embed in there, and then those lines will...
Right, and you can already see what they might do, except this is the reverse of what it's actually going to do. And then just kind of...
So you're going to mask part of that,
I'm going to mask
so it
part of
doesn't
that.
happen.
I like that. And then I'll just do a little bit of... No, I should have rolled that in, but we're faking it here.
So it looks like you're choosing colors that are already in the background as you're going through and creating more?
At the moment I am, and eventually it will start to evolve so that it will come away from this, maybe this purple and blue, and go more yellow and orange. Now I'm going to rush this a little bit, so at least you'll get the effect.
Yeah, I want to see the grid. Do you ever use like a carving tool, like a regular sculptor
Oh,
would?
I'm glad you said that, because yes, I do quite a bit. And take this off so you can see what that is. And I have a comb, part of a comb.
Oh, and you can scrape off. Oh, look at that. Very nice.
This is part of a hair pick for when people had afros. Like college, they were big, I don't know.
Wow. Well, that's about all the time we have. Your techniques are fascinating. I can see endless possibilities in this. Thank you so much for coming and showing us your techniques.
It's been a pleasure. It's really fun to do.
I'm sure. This is just gorgeous work.
Thank you.
Look, and you have some little confetti there.
Yep, and I can sprinkle those around.
Very nice. Endless possibilities.
Absolutely.